And we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Love First Christians Bible study for this week. I am joined by two of my absolute favorite people. We have Ben Williams. Ben, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. I'm glad to say you didn't get blown away in those tornadoes last week, and hopefully the daughter's okay as well.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay. And then we got Aaron Goss. Aaron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Cool. Well, that said, we got a lot to cover, lots in the way of current events, or at least one big one in the way of current events, and lots in the way of Bible study stuff. So we'll go ahead and get started. Bray is joining us in the comments. What up, Bray? Appreciate it.
Hey, Bray.
What up?
Appreciate it. Bray was very helpful to me last week. We decided to have an intervention on somebody in dire need of some mental health therapy, and we have a huge track record of success. This person is perhaps a bit beyond what non-professionals can handle. Needs to kind of sit down with somebody, but I appreciate Bray trying regardless. We have a great track record in helping people, but this one was maybe a bit beyond us. But I'm glad we tried. And you know what? I'm not giving up yet. It's in the Lord's hands now. Maybe we just plant some seeds, and maybe they look back and see the paths that were open to them, and so it goes. That's just how it goes sometimes. All right, we'll go ahead and start with some stuff. Aaron, you probably have the most that you want to cover, so I will let you go ahead and bring up a passage that you wanted to talk about in the reading.
Sure. So the first one I had was Jesus is talking to people who are just coming to listen. And, he answers questions. And then he gets several people who ask him, he says, "Come, follow me." And the man agreed. And he said, "Let me first go home and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Let the spiritually dead bury their own dead. Your duty is to go and preach about the kingdom of God." Another said, "Yes, Lord, I will follow you. But first, let me say goodbye to my family." But Jesus told him, "Anyone who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for the kingdom of God." So I assume there is a stronger reading than what is initially presented, which is that abandon your duties to your family, both the living family and the dead family. And I assume it's deeper than that, but that's the cursory reading that you get when you first read it. So I was curious what your thoughts were on
that. It's a great question. So the best that I can kind of piece together here is, I think most of us would navigate this all right. If Jesus Christ himself were to talk to you, Aaron, and be like, "Hey, I need you to go visit your neighbor. They're very lonely and they're like, they need some help." And you're like, "That's cool. Can I finish but I got to go to work in 5 minutes. Can I go to work and then do it afterward?" And Jesus is like, "No, I need you to do it right now." I think you would probably pass the test and be like, "Hey, it's Jesus. He says to go right now. Sorry, job. I'll go right now."
Yeah.
This guy's struggling a little bit, and it's understandable. Like, I get why somebody would maybe want to go to work instead of doing what Jesus says. I think the emphasis here is not, I think we need to remember that this guy is talking directly to Jesus Christ. That's an important portion of this. Because I think if somebody were to be like, "I'm forsaking all my familial duties, just because, preaching the word is better, so I'm going to go stand out on a street corner and with a megaphone, and I'm not going to pay any of my bills, and my you know what I mean, my parents are going to be in a lot of trouble." That's a little different than when Jesus actually tells you something pretty directly, right? Like, it's the difference between a law and a command, right? Like, a command is specific to you when you're given a command, and this is one of those, like, "Hey, if you love me, follow my commands. When I tell you to do something, there's a reason for it." And I would say if the Holy Spirit tells you to do something, you should do it right then, and not worry about all the, you're always going to have things that get in the way that make it inconvenient to do it right now. But if the Holy Spirit says, "I need you to do something right now," then do it right then. Or Jesus tells you to do something right then, I do it right then.
I guess my I'm going to quibble with you a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess my concern is like you're bringing up a counter example of don't go to work on a particular day because you need to go visit your neighbor, which
Uh-huh.
implies like a one-time imposition on your standard routine, which is
Sure.
no big deal. But the type of people that he's recruiting to come with him are like leaving on sabbaticals for years. And they're not even allowed to go say goodbye to their family. It just seems like a crazy imposition. You know, like it's significantly more stringent than just like don't go to work today. You know, um, yeah, I guess that's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, I'll give you it's a toughie. But I mean, Ben, I'll let you give your thoughts before I give a few more.
I got to tell you a funny story on this one.
Yeah.
So I was attending a church back in 2014, 2015, and the pastor was an independent fundamental Baptist preacher. And he had ordered me to not visit my family because he said my family wasn't right, which he's actually true. My family wasn't right, but he ordered me not to visit them, and he used this passage of scripture to tell me that I couldn't that if I visited them, it'd be equivalent, turning my hand from the plow. And this is the passage he quoted me, to tell me I wasn't allowed to visit my family. Ironically, we ended up separating ways over that because I went and visited my family anyway, and he was yelling at me, literally yelling at me, and so I parted ways with him. But I've heard messages preached from the pulpit on this, and I've heard some serious extremes. So I guess I'm kind of with Aaron on this one, Hody. That I really feel that this passage is. I have a litmus test that I've created for myself, and I'd love your opinion on it. My litmus test, whenever I read anything in the Bible and I'm question it, I go back to this. Is it my litmus test is love. Love first Christians. And to not say goodbye to your family would be unloving. So I think this is almost like in comparison to is the word that comes to my mind. In comparison to, this is how serious a matter this is, that you need to be willing, but obviously you should be saying goodbye to your family. If you should be going and saying and burying your family. But there's a comparison here. I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying this right, but my brain, I'm thinking it right. I'm not sure if I'm putting out the words correctly. So anyway,
Yeah,
I'm curious your thoughts on that, Aaron.
yeah. Well, so I'm reminded of a TV show that I watched probably close to a decade ago, called Ozark. Um, I was I'm remembering this from like a half remembered plot point, but in season one, there's this pastor that's pretty pivotal to the story of the show, and without spoiling a ton, it's because it's not really relevant to the study. The pastor ends up having his church burned down as a result of the ongoing conflict within the story, and he's so racked with grief over his role in that event that he ends up estranging himself from his wife and his newly born child, and goes off and street preaches, and like basically is homeless for a while, and is just on the street preaching, and
Really
completely
sad.
abandons his kids. Yeah.
And
And
I've witnessed that.
yeah, so I mean, I feel like this is a comparable situation, in the sense that like you're abandoning your earthly duties to your spouse who is joined with you as one in God to go preach. And I get being called to preach, but like I don't know. I feel like there's a balance there that has to be met.
Like,
And I guess this is just one of the first. I mean, there's been a lot of the Bible that I've been like, I don't like this, and it's been able to like rationalize it away as, oh, it's the Old Testament, and they're talking about
now we're in the New Testament.
yeah, we're talking about like the Levitical law, and it's easy to just ignore it away as, okay, well, this is just the law of the time. It wasn't God's will. But like, this is the first time that we've come across something that Jesus has said directly that I've been like, I don't know about that. You know?
I just think a preacher, as a preacher's kid, Cody, aren't you a preacher's kid too?
No.
Okay, as a preacher's kid, I can attest that being neglected was just the norm. It was ministry first, children second. And, so my father was more of a stranger to me than he was a father. And I know so many other preachers' kids have told me the same thing, that the ministry was more important to their father, to their mother than it was to them. And now they have serious issues that they're struggling with because they didn't have good parenting because their parents were too busy being in the work of the Lord. So I guess this is one of those ones I'm sensitive to because I've experienced it and I've witnessed it. So I don't know what to think.
I'll do my best to give another crack at this one, as somebody eager to redeem this particular passage, and maybe I shouldn't, but there's
I very, very much so want a good, plausible justification for it. Yeah.
So we're given the location of where he is, and I think that's important on this time. He's on the road, right? And so he's got to go from here to there. And in both these cases, these people say "but," which is like, but I can't because, and we don't say here the part I can't, it's just but. And so it's like, okay, so I'd love to go get with you guys, but I can't because I have to do that. I have to say goodbye to my family. And at that particular moment, he's like, the option, they're not living in an age of electronics, right? So he's like, I'd love to join you guys, but darn it, I just can't because I've got to do this. And I think what's happening here is these people are finding excuses. Now, the excuses to us seem legitimate, as anybody who calls in for sick for work, or, I'm stuck in traffic, or, whatever it may be. Those are legitimate reasons to, not be able to do something. And in these cases, it's legitimate. Jesus can see their hearts, however, and he's like, these guys are like, I'd love to follow you along, but I just can't. And the thing is there's nothing really that's going to make them go with him. There's always going to be a reason to go back home, and in these particular cases, each one provides a different reason for why they can't go with him. I would imagine, had this taken place in their hometown, and he's like, you guys are going to take off in an hour, let me say goodbye to my family and I'll hop on board. Totally different story. What we're hearing is why these guys actually can't do this ministry at all, because they've got to do something else. And they say, I'll join with you afterwards, but they're leaving now. It's time sensitive. So like there is some thoughts about like the urgency here, and that I don't want to necessarily discredit that, because that's kind of the rationale that Jesus gives here, is that he's like, you gotta, like, once you start this work, you're either in it or you're not, right? And these guys have already started the work, and then they just say like, but we only had like 5 minutes for you, right? Has anybody been part of like I do a lot of volunteer stuff, but like there's always that volunteer who shows up for like 10 minutes and then leaves, right? Like, and
usually it's like time for the pictures, then they leave.
Yeah, right. Time for a lot of pictures, to get some stuff on social media. And then it's like, but you got this the rest of the day, right, Hody? Like, you can handle it. And it's like, yeah, I'm here all day. Like, that was my plan. But like, for me, it's not a photo op, right? And so these guys, I think, potentially looking at a photo op. Now, I'm guessing, I don't know what's in their hearts, right? Like, Jesus is kind of making a bit of a critical assumption on their hearts. And I think Jesus is qualified enough to do it. I would not ever want this passage to be used in the way that some pastors would use it, that it's separating people from their family. Is actually, when you look at the cult list that we have in our Discord group, that's on the list. They want you to have no connections with like your old life or anything that might pull you out of a potentially coercive atmosphere. So I obviously don't want it interpreted that way. I just think that there's a lot of context clues here, and there's things that Jesus knows that we don't. Maybe I would chalk it up to that, as opposed to creating an entire philosophy out of this. Like, I can just abandon all my duties. I'm positive that if you had access to text and we're just like, hey, I've got a big opportunity, I'm going to text my family goodbye real quick, I am sure Jesus would have been fine with that.
That's totally fair. And go ahead.
Do you remember the big missionary surge of the 40s, 50s, and 60s? There's a lot of missionary biographies written during that time. Like I used to have a collection of them. I had over 100 different biographies that I used to be fascinated with. I used to be really fascinated with missionaries. Now I'm really not for missionary movement, but that's another story for another day. But the one of the common things that happened, and these missionaries that went over into the African countries or the jungles, is they would ship their children off to boarding schools so they could go out and be the missionaries. And so there are literally thousands of children that really didn't see their parents because their parents, and this was again one of the passages used, that they had to be sold out for Jesus. And so I'm like, well, how can you be a parent, a godly parent, a good parent, and be sold out for Jesus where you're not even there and not even being a parent? So this was a huge issue that went through evangelical Christianity that is not as bad now, but it still is a significant problem where when their kids turn teenagers, they ship them off. I mean, I know of a situation right now instantly in my head that I know that happened. And but Cody, you were onto something, Hody. I think I think we don't know the total context of this, but I went back to verse 58. Verse 58 says, foxes have dens to live in, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. So if we take that word for word, that means Jesus never laid down. We're going to just take those other verses the same way. Then we're going to say Jesus never could lay down anywhere. So they're obviously, it's almost like this is, that's where the thought comes to my mind in comparison to, or is he speaking in riddles here? That he's trying to give an example, but you were on it. You got these people who they're half-hearted. It reminds me of the rich man. Jesus said, "Go sell all your goods to feed the poor, and then come serve me." And the rich man went off crying. Does that mean everybody's supposed to sell all their everything they have? No. I think it's the same principle that we're seeing here as compared to that story. What do you think of that?
So for space, I truncated the section of the reading because I didn't want to take the whole passage for each section I grabbed. I just tried to grab the relevant part. But given the fact that you just brought up the fact that it was obviously allegorical in the first section, then it stands to reason that it should similarly be allegorical throughout the passage.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense in retrospect. And as Hody said earlier, that you take the fact that Jesus knows their hearts, and so he knows that the excuses they're giving are not genuine, that they never had any intention, they were just passing the buck essentially. That makes perfect sense. I guess the only thing I wish that the Bible did was make their excuses less frivolous, because both of the excuses they gave in without context of the fact that he's speaking in allegory rather than directly intentionality, it's highly interpretive to hostile things like what you were talking about, Ben. Having the pastor harangue you over the fact that
yes,
over your family because of the way that's structured. I just think that's a misstep, that the Bible should have made their excuses more clearly less legitimate. Oh, I left the stove on, or whatever. That's
I think the thing is their excuses kind of have to be legitimate, because you're always going to have a legitimate excuse, right? This is there's always going to be a reason to not do the work. I mean, there's just and it's always going to sound, especially when we talk about religious work, you can always just be like, oh, my kids are home and I was hoping to spend time with them, and I'm not going to be like, go be a bad father so that you can volunteer at this homeless shelter. Obviously, that's how it's going to sound. I do think that it would be nice if I think unfortunately this is Luke, and Luke is he's very literal and he doesn't read into a lot. And so we're not, unlike John, we're not given anybody's motivations here. It would be nice. I will give it to you, Aaron. It would be nice if we knew their motivations, or at least we're told Jesus saw that they were being squirrely. That I think that would fix a lot of this. I'll totally give that to you. Bray has some comments here. Passage reminded me a lot of the warning not to turn their eyes back to Sodom. Again, understandable. Why would somebody want to look back towards their home? But Jesus is saying, no, that's not it. I think, Ben, I like that you brought up the passage about the foxes not having dens. Now, Son of Man not having a place to lay his head, I maybe slightly less allegorical in the sense that he does, of course, have a place to like lay his head and sleep, but he doesn't really have a home. And this is actually what he calls the apostles to do. He doesn't want them to have a home. A lot of people take this as Jesus being a whiner, but this is actually Jesus just telling you how it is with a Christian way of life. You give up your home, and when Jesus sends them to foreign places, he tells them, stay with somebody, and I think how much more powerful would the Christian message be if we had to ingratiate ourselves with people in order to even exist there, right? To show up and just be like, hey, I need a place to stay. And right off the bat, we rely on other people's compassion, in that area. And then it makes our witness that much more powerful. We're used to thinking about, and we talk about it a lot in this group, about how our ministry needs to be less teaching scripture and more healing and compassion. And it's great that we deliver the compassion, but it's circular. We also want to give people that opportunity to be compassionate to us as well. Yeah. And so Jesus is like, hey, listen, foxes got like places to stay. Birds got like nests to stay in. That's not how it really operates in the Christian atmosphere. Like if you are like, I need to have a home, I set down roots, I don't move anywhere. I don't want to say that's not a Christian atmosphere, but when we talk about his apostleship or discipleship, that's not conducive to it. We need to be around other people. Now, thankfully, we live in the internet era. We can be around other people, right? We can do foreign ministry without leaving our homes, right? Like we have great means of doing that. But I still think there's something to the point, at least spiritually, even if we don't literally leave our houses, to say, I am not nationalistically focused. I don't care, right? Like my home is not this earth. My home is not this place. If my place were destroyed and I had to go live somewhere else, that'd be okay, right? Like my home is not that. My home is this planet, is with God's children.
This is a total side tangent.
Yeah,
but
I did that too, so it's fine.
I did a whole lot of research recently for one of my D&D characters that I was playing of the Romani, and I'm actually kind of curious. There were a lot of Romani Christians, and I wonder how much they jived with this particular passage about the fact that Jesus doesn't have a place to lay his head, essentially, and the fact that they're travelers. Yeah, I don't know the answer to it. I just wonder, like, how much that resonates with them.
Yeah, it's funny that Christians end up oh man, boy, I could really tangent this one. So one of the reasons Christian has so many pagan traditions with it, when we talk about like Christmas and things like that, where did all that come from? It's not antagonistic. The origins of that are not that we stole from them. It's that we were both deemed enemies of the empire, and we united with them and shared these traditions because we were all outsiders to this empire. And so like with these, and I could get into deep specifics on that. There's a lot of them. There are actually, I will say, there are more Christian traditions that are like, while it's like, oh, we both had trees, it's like, well, our tree comes from different from their tree. So I don't want to say like the whole thing was lifted from their culture. It was shared, and some borrowed and some not, but that's a whole separate thing. I did a bunch of Facebook posts about it because I found it fascinating. But as far as like this conversation goes, Christians largely made many converts with the gypsies the Romani people, my apologies, with the Romani people, because their lifestyles were so similar, and they were called to do many of the same things. And so they even if they didn't convert, they did share communities. And the Christians got along well with with that style of life. It is sad that in later years the Catholic Church would become so oppressive towards the Romani people, because that's just forgetting their roots. That's all that is. I will give Bray another conversation point here. Jesus stressed the urgency of preaching his message because of the impending doom from Rome. His message was the difference between surviving through missions or being cut down when the synagogue fell. There could be a timing issue here as well, that it's important to actually preach this message right now. That's kind of the original example I gave, that like there's perhaps something really impending right now. We're actually told in just a few passages after this that Pilate starts butchering zealots. So there is something, there is obviously a little bit of urgency and reason that Jesus just can't hang around and wait. Rome is not taking things as casually and slow as maybe we would want them to. And then Bray says it's a message specific to historical context and shouldn't be literally applied today. Yeah. Ben, any closing thoughts on this before we move on to a different passage?
I think Bray just said it the best in summarizing everything we just said. Is we cannot be applying this literally to modern day. That was, I think, something applicable to that situation, to that moment in history.
Yeah. Cool. Now, Aaron, you mentioned this one as something you wanted to talk about. I actually mentioned it as well earlier. I don't know if you saw, but in the Discord as well. If slaves should escape from their masters and take refuge with you, you must not hand them over to their masters. Let them live among you in any town they choose, and do not oppress them. Go ahead.
Can I bring up the reason why I brought it up? Because
sure.
I was thinking, given the Israeli conception of slaves, where they were more akin to like indentured servants, is this a reflection of other cultures' slaves being more like chattel slavery, and thus giving them refuge? Or are they talking about slaves in the form of like indentured servants? And if they are, then how are they reconciling the fact that they're breaking their contract? Like somebody sells themselves into slavery to alleviate a debt or something like that, and then escapes it. That seems more like a shirking of their duty rather than like truly escaping slavery. I was trying to gather like my thoughts about like what does slavery mean in this context?
Here, let me share this tab here so we can get, since we're calling into question here we go, the context of this. So this is not talking about other people's slaves. They're talking about their own. Obviously, another person's slave, based on the rest of the how negatively this gospel is talking about, or I guess the Torah is talking about the other peoples. Obviously, you can keep their liberated slaves, but they are actually talking about their own camp here. They're talking about the camp and how to clean themselves and how to keep it clean. So when he brings up these slaves, they are talking about them, and then goes on to say no Israelite man or woman. So they're talking about the Israelites here. And so it's not just like, obviously the other nations which are having like dealing with slavery in much worse ways than Israel is. This is still talking about being good to slaves. In fact, the idea that a slave would want to escape from you by necessity means that they are correct to want to escape from you, that you are to be the kind of master that they would want to be with. And simply, if they leave, that's a sign that you were not good to them, and that they deserve to leave you. And so I think that's what we're getting here. It's pretty straightforward, and it's obviously very powerful. The idea that you would not be returning a slave, especially with how often slavery kind of gets justified. But yeah, like I think so I had a dog that ran away, and we don't know the old owners, whoever they used to be, but given their hostility toward people, I mean, was just clearly abused. And if that person was like, technically, that's my dog by the law, I don't care. It is not your dog in God's eyes because you were abusive. This is not somebody that can be your slave in God's eyes because you were not a proper master. And this is something else that we see kind of in a lot of these Deuteronomical laws, that while many of them are kind of scary and bad, there's always a way for the person who is under the oppression to get out from under it. Yeah, like it's not like, too bad you signed a contract. We mentioned earlier, like there's ways to get out of these contracts. If you're like, I got fooled, you're still not required to fulfill the terms of the contract. There's a sacrifice and a payment to make, and then you just say, yeah, I'm done with it. I'm not gonna fulfill that anymore. Like, that's an abusive way. And this is just another tool that the oppressed have to make sure that, I mean, it specifically talks about oppression in this because this is how we deal with oppression, that we say you should not have to be forced to live like that. I don't know if that answers any question or anything that you had, Aaron, but that's kind of the way I see this passage.
Gotcha. Yeah, it just stood out to me because I was like, I want to know the context of it because, yeah, okay. Okay, so I gotta ask one that like really, like, this is the one that the main one I wanted to redo. I don't remember what day.
Well, first, before you move on, Ben, did you have any thoughts about this one?
The thought that comes to my mind with this passage, because you laid out the context very well, is that mercy, even in the Torah, mercy is shown yet again. Mercy over law, mercy over duty. God's mercy. God wants mercy and empathy. Period.
Yeah, that's simple. Bray says someone may have been coerced into selling their rights. Like we were talking about the progression of property. Let's see here. Property rights for women in the West. The Scottish and Irish sent to the Salt Flats were indentured servants, but weren't indentured without coercion. Yeah. So even like kind of the concept we have of indentured servitude kind of involves coercion, and we're trying to get away like from that as much as possible. I mean, the fact that it seems to be something, if you could just run away, and that invalidates the entire concept of your slavery, that this is almost like a transaction to be like, hey, yeah, I'll work for you for 7 years if I can have all these great things. And then it's like, oh, sure. Right. And then it's like, but if you start abusing me, I'm keeping all those great things and it's over. Right. And it's like, yeah. Like there's like an understanding there, and it's a mutual transaction as opposed to one of just being like, I had nowhere else to go. We actually read that. Was that this week where you're not to, when you give somebody out a loan, you're not to take put a loan against their home or their tools that they use for work, right? Like you don't take their millstone that they use to grind the grain with. Yeah, like that's from the reading this week, that you're not to get somebody into a situation where they have to come to you for a loan just to like live, right? Like these loans are supposed to be for extra stuff. So if you even find yourself in like this slavery, indentured servitude type of situation, it can only be because you wanted like some type of luxury that was really unaffordable to you at that moment. And 7 years worth of work is a valid price to pay for it. Otherwise you just wouldn't do it. And nobody is even permitted in this culture to give you a loan for against your absolute necessities for life.
And now we have landlords.
Yeah, and then we have landlords. That's probably my furthest left position that I have. I side with Adam Smith when it comes to rent, but there's that's a whole other shtick. Let's see. I read Bray's comment. Oh, I interrupted you, Aaron. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and get to the passage that you were like, I really wanted to talk about this one.
Yeah. So I don't remember what day it was, but one of our days readings, there was a bookended passage. Like it started with one and ended with another, about Jesus going into villages that either accepted or rejected his messaging.
The kick up dust.
Yeah, exactly. The kick up dust. And so I thought it was particularly interesting that I'm going to read the beginning and the end. So there's a whole lot of stuff that happens in the middle, but at the time, as the time drew near for him to ascend to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. He sent messengers ahead to a Samaritan village to prepare for its arrival. But the people of the village did not welcome Jesus because he was on his way to Jerusalem. When James and John saw this, they said to Jesus, "Lord, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them. So they went to another village. And at the end of the passage, it says, "If you enter a town and it welcomes you, eat whatever is set before you. Heal the sick and tell them the kingdom of God is near you now. But if a town refuses to welcome you, go out to its streets and say, 'We wipe even the dust of your town from our feet to show that we have abandoned you to your fate. And know this, the kingdom of God is near.' I assure you, even wicked Sodom would be better off than such a town on Judgment Day." And I was struck by the juxtaposition between the first and the last sections, because his disciples are like, "Hey, should we call down hellfire on these people for rejecting us?" And Jesus is like, "No." And then he tells his disciples at the end of the passage, curse them. Like, y'all are doomed as a result of rejecting me. And I didn't know what to take of that. I didn't understand the back and forth there.
Sure. I think this is in Luke chapter 10, but actually, do I have the wrong? I think I'm in the wrong area. This is my bad. I'm going to stop sharing this. That's the Good Samaritan, which we also read this week. That's a different one. Let's see here. Ben, why don't we get your comments about it too while I look this one up here?
I'm looking for it myself.
Okay. So, all right. So my thoughts on this one, just offhand, I think that this is actually a critical piece of importance that differentiates Christianity from many other faiths. And that's that we are not to be the reason that a lifestyle fails, that they are to create their own destruction. And the idea is that when God shows up in Sodom and like throws a bunch of fire down and people are turning into salt pillars and whatever, everybody's dying in mass death and destruction, and he escapes the very few people who are actually any good, that fate is better for a city than their own fruits, than the own stuff that they show, that the own fruit that they sow from their labor, what they do. And I agree with this, and I think it's actually imperative that other Christians agree with this, because there's two sides to this. And I think the more important side of this is that Christians, especially the apostles, want to be the reason that a sin makes somebody fail. So, for example, somebody says, "I lied to you," and we want to take a club and beat them and be like, "That's the consequence for lying to me, is that I got to hit you." Instead, if you let somebody lie, what a tangled web we weave, right? You let them face the consequence for their own lies. Look at this with the prodigal son. He is bad with money. That's what prodigal means, right? Bad with money. What is the fruit of being bad and wasteful with money? He ends up eating out of a pig trough and living like a homeless person, right? That is the natural consequence. What Christians want to do too many times is see somebody be wasteful with money and hit them over the head. And then I am the consequence for your failure. But which one of these is a worse fate? To be smashed and then being like, "Well, I guess I won't lie again." Like, yeah, that hurts for like a while, I guess, if somebody beat me. But if I find myself destitute because I'm so bad with money, that's obviously a worse fate than just getting punched, right? Like, and so what we have here is a situation where we're saying these people are wicked. They reject the Holy Spirit. In this case, these people are rejecting the idea that the gospel can be shared with foreigners, right? Or that outsiders can be part of this Judeo-Christian faith. It's something that the Jews are actually having real problems accepting. We see it over and over. And this is what we see again here, is that they're just like, I am not open to that message. And so the idea is, what do you get? Let's take the specific fate here. What do these xenophobic people, what becomes of them? Well, they are literally killed. in a very real sense, their xenophobia allows them, not only do they live in squalor and wickedness, but when their enemies come, they stood with nobody because they kicked out anybody that wanted to do them any good and any outside influences that would have been beneficial to them. And so they suffer for that. And those natural consequences are even worse than Sodom. I would say that, like, you could argue that both got destroyed, but in the one, at least the good people got to leave, right? Like in this other one, they're just all bad people and they died in obscurity, right? Like there's no good that anything that became of them. At least some good came from Sodom. Nothing good came from here. And it's a very real sense that if we just say, like, that's the natural consequences of your xenophobia, of your inability to share this gospel with other people, that carries so many real world penalties that we as Christians don't need to rain fire on them. We don't need to break into their homes. We don't need to throw bricks through their windows. They are going to suffer the consequences of their sins. We see this over and over, and I believe it's actually a truth. I'm kind of yammering on about this one, but it's something I'm a little bit passionate about. But any thoughts that you have about this one, Ben?
You just destroyed Christian nationalism.
Yeah,
my bad.
Literally, just by giving this what you're explaining, because that's exactly correct. It goes to, it's the same principle. It's not our job to be the punisher. It's, it's not like Constantine and this sign conquer, and then you look at the crusades that happened and the millions and millions of lives that were lost in the crusades because of they thought it was their job to force Christ down the throats of the Muslim world, and millions of lives were lost because of it. And in all it ended up happening is that the crusaders turned into the oppressors, and even people who were followers of Christ, true followers of Christ, were tortured. And that's what happened with the Catholic Church. They tortured and killed millions of people because they were forcing them to become Catholic. And that, I think you just laid that out very well.
Yeah, I think that should be a Hody Facebook post at some point, because that you gave a really good argument there.
You did. You gave a very good argument.
Perhaps so. I usually do this one. I believe I've made this point when it comes to the prodigal son before, but this would be another good passage to talk about it in, to just kind of be like, if people are sinning, we leave them to their sin and they suffer. If you want me to further destroy Christian nationalism, and this is a pretty bad one, then all right, what happens when you let gay people be gay? They do fine.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. But we're promised that sin was supposed to destroy them, right? Like, this is why you see so much hostility towards like 0.1% of the population, like trans people, right? Because what happens when they're
because they need to be put in their place.
Exactly. Because if you don't put them in their place, they're fine. Nothing bad happens to them, right? Like, I mean, of course, they're still people. So if they lie, like they'll suffer for being liars, right? Like if they, if they're murderers and they suffer the same results as murderers. But like, there's just this is the promise. This is why I think it's so important when we talk about the fruits of the Spirit and the roots of the tree, right? Like if a good tree can't produce bad fruit and a bad tree can't produce good fruit, it's impossible. Jesus tells us that. So when a gay couple is capable of producing, of adopting kids and loving them and raising them to be good, strong people, that's the fruit. That's the fruit. That's the fruit we have to go on. That's the promise. And Christians need to be violent with them, need to apply a penalty, because otherwise it doesn't hold up. They don't suffer the consequence for their sin and therefore invalidate their Bible, right? Because there was no actual consequence for it. If there is some kind of consequence for it, then it would manifest itself. None of us out here are going to say, yeah, go ahead, have an affair, lie to your spouses, whatever, right? Like, obviously not, because those produce actual spiritual consequences. Being a gay person pretending to be straight has consequences. Being a gay person and just being gay does not, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, huge differences. Anyway.
Got time for one more?
I like this joke. Oh, we got time. We got time for a couple more. Bray says, Sons of Thunder, can we do the lightning thing? That is funny that James and John, the Sons of Thunder, are asking to rain down lightning. That's maybe that's the embarrassing way in which they got their name. That would be unfortunate. That would be unfortunate. Before we go to you, Ben, did you have any from the readings this week that you wanted to talk about?
So the only other one that I want to talk about was in today's reading, Luke 13, 10, the story of the woman who Jesus healed on the Sabbath, and he pissed off the Pharisees.
One of my favorites. Yes.
I just he chose to do that on the Sabbath to heal somebody. How dare he? And just destroyed their rules just right in front of him, and he did it just so boldly. But something that I guess I've never really noticed, and I'm sure I've heard it taught on before, but how that woman, she had been crippled 18 years by an evil spirit. And that one was like, wow. That, I know not all, you've got the charismatic world, they see an evil spirit in almost every illness. But we can't we can't take this so literally that we apply to everybody and everything. It's this particular story. But it does make me wonder if there are times where some of the illnesses we see in somebody that are very unique is because of an evil spirit. And I don't know. It's just something I was pondering on today. My daughter was swimming in the pool at the Y, and I'm sitting there and I'm just sitting there pondering on that. It's like, I just wonder, it's like, for me, I'm chronically ill. I have chronic illness, but I endured a lot of substantial abuse as a child. And I've noticed that so many who were abused as children have chronic illness. So when you hear a message preached on this and they talk about how these illnesses can have an evil spirit, it's like, oh, thanks a lot. I have an evil spirit in me. When really what happened is evil was done to me by others, and it messed up my body's neurological system, and my body literally had, there's research done now that when someone has abused substances as a child, that it literally alters their core DNA. I mean, this is like documented, scientifically proven that the core DNA of a child is altered when they're abused, which is mind-boggling to me. I had a osteopath. I can't remember the name of the doctor that's kind of everything, a chiropractor and a doctor all at once. I can't think of the what they're called. Was explaining that to me, and the research that's come out. There it is.
Just in case anybody thinks Ben's making this up.
Yep, I ain't making it up.
I did not know this.
Really?
I thought that couldn't be right. And so you win.
I was also thinking that as well. Like, I was like, that seems unreasonable.
Okay, let's pull that up one more time there. Let's just make sure everyone can see
I don't want you to bask in being right. No. Okay. Yeah.
But that is research that's just come out in the last, 10, 15 years, 20 years. Before that, they didn't know. And now they're discovering the long-term effects, like it's saying there, are mind-boggling. What happens to the human body. And sure enough, I have neurological issues and all these other health issues and chronic pain issues that are directly connected to the substantial abuse I endured. So, so you take someone like me that was, when I was really fragile, when I was going through some of my PTSD issues, and you hear the Pentecostal group of the Charismatics where they say there's an evil spirit with all these illnesses. That made someone like me feel like, okay, what am I evil? Do I have an evil spirit in me? Is this from an evil spirit? And the answer is no. So again, we can't take things literally. This is a story that's all on its own. But on the same token, I just wonder how many illnesses that could still be an evil spirit. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Odie?
I mean, outside of being mind blown by that fact, that is,
I just blew your mind, didn't I?
Exploded a million pieces over here. I'm still coming to grips with what all that means. I'm gonna look into that,
dude. You go down that rabbit trail, and it'll blow your mind.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a way besides mutations to alter DNA. So I mean, guess
just
like that's
the fact that you end up getting you get abused as a child, and the results of your abuse lead you to have actual physical maladies beyond just the obvious of, like, say, starvation leads to malnutrition or whatever. Beyond
Right.
just that, and then you're blamed further for having those maladies as a result of the fact that you're a sinful kid or something like that.
Yeah, that's
As
exactly what happens.
just
Yes.
compounds the trauma. Yeah, no, that's crazy.
So this is actually this passage in the scriptures. I oftentimes use a different passage. For example, so Jesus heals a man with a crippled hand on the Sabbath, and this is where we get Jesus actually gives the same explanation. He's like, if your kid falls into a well, don't you pull him out? This one, the answer is a little bit different, because instead of saying, like, I believe he says, like, if your ox is stuck in a mire or your kid falls in a well, wouldn't you pull him out, right? It actually differs gospel to gospel. For anybody thinking the gospels are inerrant, this is actually one of those passages that, sorry, it gets cited differently in all the gospels. You know, the message is the same, generally speaking, but obviously, you know, it can't be inerrant because the same story is told differently. That's just that they can't all be true. Sorry. But that the importance with this one, because this is a different instance. This is a woman who's actually bent over, not somebody with, not a male with a lame hand. It's a woman who's been bent over for 18 years. And Jesus' explanation here is actually slightly different. Instead of saying, like, wouldn't you save somebody's life on the Sabbath if you had to? Because that was his explanation with the man with the crippled hand. He's arguing you still do mundane work on the Sabbath, right? Like, doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water, right? Because it's, people understand inherently that it's like, yeah, that's work. I guess I'm expending, like, energy, but it's not like full
Labor.
job, right? It's not
Yeah.
like labor. What I'm doing here is I'm doing, like, general routine stuff. It's cruel to let my ox and donkey thirst just because, oh, it's the 7th day of the week. Sorry, you're gonna go without water so that I can do this.
Yeah,
Now,
the animal's not going to understand why it's dying of thirst. Because,
correct, right? The animal has no idea, like, what you're doing here, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, oh, thanks for starving me one day a week. Like, intermittent fasting is not good for your dogs, guys, right? Like, that's something you can do for yourself, but let's not do this to dogs, and everything like that. So they're aware that they do all these little things. Now, this is actually really critical. It's one of the we've talked about this slightly before. It's something that I'm actually I studied a lot about because I found it fascinating. But that there's an issue here, and you actually see it. Those who read the Christmas Carol, this almost never makes it into any of, like, the adaptations or the plays or, you know, musicals or anything like that. And I feel like it's really too bad, because the Ghost of Christmas Present gives two great monologues, both of which routinely get cut out just because they want to make him like Santa Claus or something, which I'm fine with him being Santa Claus, but there's a lot of little bits there. Anyway, if you've ever seen, like, the full play or read the full book, you'll be familiar with this passage. And it comes from the Bible. And it's this part where it's like, why are the churches and and these places that feed people, it's their only place to get food and water, they close up for the Sabbath, and to say, sorry, we're not supposed to be working. Okay, what does everybody else do? Like, just die of thirst, just don't eat? Because that's basically what they've been doing in this Charles Dickens era. They're just not eating. Sunday is a time we just don't eat, right? Like, it's a bad time. And this is actually something similar that's gone on here. Now, we're reading through the Old Testament, and we're aware the job falls on the Levitical priest to make sure everybody gets fed. And what they've done is mutated their faith to say, like, oh, I'd love to feed you 7 days a week, but I got to rest on one of those days. That was never the original doctrine. That is something that the people decided to do because they said, oh, it says 6 days for work. I'm not allowed to do any work on those other days. And Jesus is like, no. We're trying to create a restful atmosphere for everybody. You not feeding people is creating a less it's rest for you, but it's creating a less restful environment for your entire community. You really should be feeding people. I think it's the gospel, and then I forget exactly where, but it gets repeated again in the Christmas Carol, where it's like, oh, God says we can't, and Jesus is like, yeah, don't ascribe to God what mankind has done, and that's something that the Ghost of Christmas Present says again. And so in this case here, we're healing somebody, not just feeding somebody, although that's kind of a similar rationale here, but we're healing somebody who's been bent and crippled for 18 years. And Jesus is like, I'm just going to put this right real quick. And they're like, oh, you got 6 out of 7 days of the week to put things right. I'm like, man, the Sabbath is not a break from putting things right. The Sabbath is a day of rest and reflection to understand that God, like who God is, right? Like for us to develop that relationship better with him. We've already read earlier that man was not made, or the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath is there to serve us. So as soon as we are less served because of X, Y, or Z doctrine, say the Sabbath in this case, then we're not practicing it correctly. Like these doctrines were created for our benefit, not for our detriment. So as soon as we're not healing, not feeding, not giving our dogs water, not giving our oxen food, right? Like we have botched the meaning of the Sabbath. This is one of my absolute favorite passages. And this particular one, most of the time we quote the guy, but I love that, like the implication of this one as well. It's not just, would you do a miraculous thing on the Sabbath, but don't you still like make sure everybody around you is kind of taken care of just generally on the Sabbath? Like same policy. Sorry, it being the Sabbath doesn't like forbid you from doing good things. Aaron, did you have any thoughts about this one?
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything special that you haven't already said.
Cool. All right. You said you had one more, Aaron.
And yeah, it's actually just directly above this. So it's the passage immediately before this. Yeah, the bottom part of it regarding the fig tree.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
fig tree.
Yeah, so we have Jesus in the parable of the fig tree over and over and over again throughout the Bible, and this is the first telling of it that I've seen that involves some sort of redemption for the fig tree.
Yep.
And I was just kind of curious, like what y'all's thoughts were on the fact that, like, in every other telling of the story that I've heard, Jesus comes across the fig tree that's not producing fruits. You've talked about it even earlier so far today, and curses it because it's a fruit that doesn't, a tree that doesn't bear fruit needs to be cut off. And in this particular story, the man is about to cut it off, just like Jesus has in other parts of the same story before. And the gardener says, "Sir, give it one more chance. Let me give it special attention. And if we don't get figs next year, then we can kill it, or remove it down, cut it down." And I'm curious, why isn't that the main telling of the story? I guess I like the idea of redemption for the tree. Particularly that it's being given special attention. Like it's not being. It's like the sheep that goes missing from the herd or whatever. If the sheep doesn't come back on its own, it deserves to be dead. No, Jesus actually goes out and retrieves the sheep. It gives it special attention. I like that story much more than the idea of Jesus coming across the tree and it not bearing fruit and he just kills it or curses it or whatever.
Yeah. So we are told, we've talked about this because it's a complicated passage, the parable of the fig tree. Yep. In the other Gospels, just as a summary for anybody who hasn't kept up, because we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Jesus sees a fig tree in bloom. Now, this is not presented as a parable. Jesus sees a fig tree with its leaves out in summer, expects figs. It has nothing. Jesus curses it and it dies, right? Oh. We don't have that story in Luke. Instead, we have this one. So here's the only way to reconcile those together is that it's talking about two different events. Yeah. One is Jesus killing this fig tree, which is possible because, frankly, in fact, if we put the Gospels together and assume they're two different stories, Jesus is like one more chance. And then he's about to, we're getting into the crucifixion and betrayal bit here in Luke in a few chapters, that he's going to see that same fig tree and be like, I gave you a last chance already, fig tree. Now you're dead. Right. But we didn't get the prior warnings in the other Gospels, but there is a chance that this is actually just the same story. However, the message is completely different. Like if this is the same story, then you are taking wildly different messages away from this, right? In the one, it's cursed because, and it was related to the Pharisees, right? They look like they're in bloom. They look like they're there to provide fruit. And Jesus kills it because you're saying, you fool people to get over here. You fool us into showing up. You provide no fruit. You're dead. I'm done with you, right? And in this one, we have Jesus being like, oh, hey, look, it's a fig tree. 3 years in a row now. This thing hasn't given us anything, right? Now, I agree with you, Aaron. I like this a lot better because what does Jesus say? It's not, and I think this is so okay. And then Bray says John was the only first hand account. There are going to be discrepancies. Yeah. So I firmly reject this is a boy tangent. I don't even know if I should get into it. I firmly reject that there's a Gospel of Q, that there was like one that they all copied off of, because the differences are so both wildly different and also like slight that if you were just copying somebody's work, you would do different things. This is one of those reasons. Like,
you got to be careful these days when you say Gospel of Q without any context, because
sorry, that there is one gospel.
yeah, I know.
And 4 people chose to plagiarize it.
The first thing you said when I heard my hair in my head when you said Gospel of Q is like, oh, QAnon.
Oh well, that's a different gospel. That's a different type of heresy here.
Yeah.
But I like this. So what we're doing here, as opposed to just immediately tearing down, what does Jesus say? Listen, how often do we as Christians judge people who do something that is legitimately bad, but they are doing so under terrible circumstances? We're not worried about all the things that came from them. What could be the problem with this fig tree? Doesn't have access to the water and the fertilizer and everything. Listen, when anybody who's grown a garden before knows that plants will do everything they take to survive, but they won't create like offspring. They won't give you seeds unless they are healthy, right? Like unless they have enough nutrients. Because if a plant knows it only has enough nutrients to keep itself alive, I say knows as though it's some sentient being, but the way the biology works is It's not going to oversaturate itself with offspring and children if it barely has enough for itself to survive. That might be something to talk about with economics today, but to move on from that is to say
replacement, you know?
Right, yeah. Like we're not having children because I don't think I can afford them. It's not that I would be a good parent. It's because the situation around me is bad. And Jesus is like, all right, let's give this thing its best shot. Let's put it in a good position, give it some good fertilizer. I mentioned at the beginning of this Bible study, we talked to somebody who is in a bad place, right? Like, I mean, told me he needed therapy, which is the reason we tried. And it didn't work out, but like, at least we like tried, you know? And this is kind of one of the very few, like, I knew it was a reach anyway. Like most of the time when we try, it's somebody who I think we can reach. This time I was like, I just want to reach and then let it be in God's hands, because I know this person. And anytime I hear somebody say, I know I need therapy, I want to give it to them and try their best. Right. But at least we tried, right? Like at least we gave them our best. But how many of us see somebody post something abhorrent on Facebook and we don't give them their best shot beforehand? How many people sin out of desperation? Look at criminal statistics. How many robberies are there if people are not desperate? I mean, like 1%, less than 1%. I mean, it's fractional, right? Like, how many people think about killing themselves or other people if they're in a good place? Well, again, 1%, 0.5%, something like that.
Yeah.
Jesus wants us to way Jesus is judging people. And the way he wants us to see them is to plant around them. We talk all the time about the fruit, right? And the fruit's bad, fruit's bad, fruit's bad. Tree must be bad. Well, maybe the tree is planted in the wrong place and it needs to be uprooted, planted somewhere else. Give it its best chance. We have had 3 people join the Love First Christians Discord, and I had them join because I knew they had transphobic tendencies. None of them are transphobic anymore. And that entirely has to do with the system they're in, where they're planted, right? Now, I'm not saying that this is 100%. Absolutely. I'm talking about a failure because I know it's not 100%, right? But like, we want to at least give it a chance. At least give somebody a chance. When we see, man, I can't help but think of like Israel and Hamas and Palestine and stuff right now, and some of the stuff that you see like these people doing, it's out of desperation, right? Like if these people had access to all these freedoms and resources and food and running water and electricity and all these great things, and they still decided to keep like blowing up people, all right, that's it, right? Like, you know what I mean? That then I feel
Right.
comfortable judging you. I don't feel comfortable judging you when an oppressive faction occupies your land, cuts off your power, gives you a fraction of the food
Preach.
that you need to live a healthy life, and then for me to be like, that's who these animals are. I hate what they're doing.
Killed
But
85% of your family. Yeah.
to be clear, I absolutely hate their response, right? Like, I make no justifications about October 7th, but I don't want to toss them into the fire as a bunch of evildoers until they're in this situation, until they're in this healthy situation. And if you think to yourself and say, well, of course they wouldn't do that if they're in a healthy situation. Okay, well, that's my point, right? That's the point, right? There are some people who will do these evils when they're in a healthy situation. Look at the other side of this border. That's unfortunate, right? And like in this case, it's appropriate to be like, okay, that fig tree, it has every reason to produce, and it's not.
80% of the population
Right.
is supportive of what's being done to Israel or to Palestine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're living in luxury.
Right. And I mean, we see this with Christian nationalists a lot, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have, there's a time to flip tables, right? And we don't want to go into somebody who's suffering. I mean, Jesus is so compassionate to people who have committed murder, committed robberies. Like, people have done terrible things, and Jesus is dining with them and celebrating with them and saying, if you're going to make it to heaven, you better be good to people in prison, right? Like, you better be good to these guilty people. You better be giving them this fertilizer, this good soil, this water. You better be taking care of them and fix them, right? Do your best to fix them. And if they're bad, hey, let me curse the fig tree, right? Let me get it. I'll kill it.
Well, and I guess now that I know that this passage exists, like, I understand completely your prior context of the fact that he was speaking specifically analogizing the fig tree to the Pharisees. Like, I totally get that. But having known of the existence of this passage, I can't ever like the other passages about the fig tree, and relative to this one, because it makes so much more sense to the overall narrative that I have of Jesus. I likened it to like the sheep goes astray and you go retrieve the sheep. You don't just abandon it. Yeah.
If I were to create one mega gospel, I would use this one for the fig tree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben, you've been so quiet.
I've been just enjoying listening because I'm sitting here just agreeing with you on this one. It's just, my tattoo on my arm says forgiven, and it's the lion and the lamb, and on the bottom it says forgiven, because I'm one of those ones that it's taken decades of my life before I started to come out of the extremes of fundamentalist Christianity, and then I also went batshit crazy and just went nuts, and made a lot of wrong choices. And if we followed through with what a lot of people teach in Christianity, I should have been dead 100 times over. But instead, little bits of fertilizer here and there, where every once in a while there was someone with kindness and love that said something to me that resonated, and it was years later, and I still remember some of that person and the love they showed me. And it's just a couple people. It's not that many people, but they planted some fertilizer. And it wasn't 3 years, it was 20 years. It was 30 years, whatever it was. It was a very long period of my life. I didn't really start getting serious about working on my life and how messed up I was till age 40, and I'm going to be turning 48 this year. So give you an idea. So I'm a living example of that passage of scripture. So it's really special to me. When I read that, I was like, oh my word, what redemption. And then I was like, wait a minute. That's not what the other gospel said. And the first thought that came to my mind is it's a reminder that each of these gospels, they gave their own narrative of what they saw, how they interpreted it things differently, in my opinion. I don't know how else to say it.
I feel you. No, I
Yeah.
feel you.
I'm a living example of that passage, and that's why it's special to me.
You're obviously, you felt this, but I think everybody's got to be able to relate to it somehow, that there was a time in our lives where we weren't living great, but almost all of us, instead of just being like, I'm a bad person, can be like, oh, I was influenced by this stuff, right? Like I was in I was looking at bad stuff. I wasn't feeding myself good things. We look at how people's points of view are shaped by consumption, right? Like media consumption, Facebook consumption, social media, wherever they're getting their information from is it's the two wolves, right? Which one wins? The one that you feed, Yeah. And so if no people getting bad food become great. I mean, look at the parable of the seeds. That was another one we read this week, right? Like he's scattering seeds along. What happens to the one who don't get nutrients? Well, they die. Right? I mean, this is how it goes, right? Like, were the seeds bad? Well, they got planted in a bad place, right? All these seeds are good. They just landed somewhere bad, So we want to put people in the best position possible to succeed before we never want to administer any judgment, but our job is to get them into that best position to succeed. Give them that fertilizer. If there's any striking to do, we let Jesus Christ take care of it and somebody else. I do want to stress that I do feel that these passages personally, I guess I don't want to stress it because I want the Holy Spirit to guide you on whatever it is. I believe that both happened. And I think it's very meaningful that Jesus, give it another chance. We give the Pharisees another chance. They choose to kill him 1 year after this, right? And then Jesus is like, yeah, okay, we're going to kind of pull the plug on the whole Pharisee experiment, right? Like we gave them as much love, we welcome them. Come on in, join us if you want to. But you choose to, now you've chosen the soil, right?
And look what happened in AD 70. I mean, they paid AD 70, the Jews paid a great price.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and God will take care of it. I think that's the thing with evil. We worry what are we going to do about it? We as Christians should probably spend 99% of the time removing planks from our own eyes and just let God take care of the rest. It will work out. If we focus on getting our churches right, our family right, ourselves right, the rest is going to come along okay. That let God is in control and surrender that to him. Bray says, I have the Hebrew for lion's wrath and lamb's mercy tattooed above Hakuna Matata for the same reason. That's you're a bold dude, Bray. You are a bold dude. There is one that I wanted to talk to before we get into current events this week. Was there another one that you had, Aaron?
No, that was the 4 I had.
That was it. Okay, great. Cool. Then I wanted to share this one here. Look, it's basic. There's nothing new I'm going to tell you here, but we went over the parable of the Good Samaritan this week. And this is just one of those goated parables for a good reason, right? It is just dripping with amazingness. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, you answered correctly. Jesus replied, do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked, and who is my neighbor? This has been something that Christians have been failing since Cain. Am I my brother's keeper? Do I have to take care of everybody else around me? I shouldn't have to take care of all these people. So there's a few bits about this that I got time, so I'm just going to point out here. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. And then you get the priest and everybody else visiting him, and they pass over him. And then there's a Samaritan as he traveled, came to where the man was. Very important to this. Samaritans at this time are actually confined to a specific area. They are not to leave. This man is an illegal trespasser if indeed we are reading this correctly, that this is a road between Jerusalem and Jericho. The Samaritan is forbidden to be there. He is not allowed to be there. And instead of worrying about himself, because it would be really easy to do, right? Like, you're wanted. You know what I mean? You're supposed to be keeping a low profile. He sees somebody in need. And then he puts the man on his own donkey, brings him to an inn, takes care of him. The next day, takes 2 denarii, gives him to the innkeeper. He says, look after him. And when I return, I will reimburse you for the extra expenses that I may have. Why does this guy have to leave? Because it's illegal for him to stay. This guy knows that he'll be caught by the authorities if he stays at the inn. So he's like, I'm just going to come by and visit sometime, right? I can't just sit here and stay with him because I'm a wanted man, you know? Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor between the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus says, go and do likewise. Pretty basic here. This whole thing comes as an answer to what question? Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? This is not just important for being nice to your neighbors. This is how you are saved. Another important part here. The Samaritans did practice an Abrahamic faith, but they did not practice what we know as Judaism. This is another passage, and there's others, where we can see a non-believer gaining entrance to the kingdom of heaven because of how they live the law. What does it mean to believe? People will tell you, you say things, you do this thing, you practice this, you go in water, you go, but we have people that go in water and then we're told they get saved. And we have people that we're told they believed and they practice all these things, but they didn't get saved. And so we've got all these discrepancies in the Bible itself, all these paradoxes for how we get saved, and there's all these different examples. Jesus is so clear about it every time they ask him, stop judging other people, forgive other people, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on that, right? There's different interpretations when they talk about, what's the law? What's the most important law? But there's one where he just says, love your neighbor as yourself. On this hang all the law and prophets. Every law, every prophet, everything I could tell you, all the wisdom of the world, it all hangs on loving your neighbor as yourself. All of it. All of it hangs on that. Not just a little, not just most, not just this. People want to add maybe and also get baptized, maybe and also believe in this, and maybe you can't believe this about the Trinity. And I'm reading through the Concordia right now, which is really fascinating. It's Martin Luther or whatever. But you see him have a million different debates about all these little things. And Jesus makes it so simple. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I was just, are you saying that Jesus is saying that by works alone you can be saved?
By love, it's the love that saves him. Now,
right,
this man's works is a manifestation of that love.
Right.
But I don't want to make it seem like you can simply, I mean, heck, this would go against other passages we've read where you just pay a bunch of money, right?
Right. But I mean, but like, let's say that this Good Samaritan this is one example of this Good Samaritan's life. And he consistently acts like this all the time, but he's not a member. He's not a Jewish person that's following like the Torah law, and he's also not a Christian following Jesus. You're saying that he would be granted eternal life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have no problem saying that. I'm going to go ahead and share a different passage here. And it's the passage of the sheep and the goats. And what I love is this question. Lord, when did we see you hungry or feed you, or thirsty or give you something to drink? When did we see a stranger and invite you in, need clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And it's in converse to the answer of the other people who are like, oh yeah, we did all these great things for you. These people have no idea they're serving God. They have no idea what their faith is. We tend to think of faith as like a label, right? What faith are you? We say, oh, Christianity. Right?
Yeah.
But faith is obviously deeper than that. These are people that treated the least of these and their brothers and sisters. That's their faith. That's their faith. Call it what you want. You want to call it Baha'ism, Christianity, Hinduism, whatever you want to call it. That's the faith. right? Whatever this practice is the faith. This is what gets you saved. This is the faith. And you might call it something different. This shouldn't shock us at all. We have a million different kinds of Christianity, right? Like we have a million different words for all these different things. We have different languages, right? We don't know who here knows Jesus' real name as pronounced in his native tongue. Very few people, right? The people who do, does that matter? Right? Like whatever you decide to call it, right? Like whatever the exact, I mean, very few of us have ever read the whole Bible. Very few of us understand exactly what we're putting our faith in, right? We're just saying this general idea, this faith that when we take care of our brothers and sisters, that's important, right? That's godly. This is when we examine spirituality. Every faith on earth, every major faith on earth has the golden rule. That's not an accident. As you explore spirituality, you will come to the conclusion. It's an unnatural conclusion, but you will come to the conclusion that you should treat others the way you want to be treated, that you should do good to other people, right? Like this is the faith. This is God, right? He's somewhere in there. And you may call it whatever you want. You might call it Judaism or Christianity or whatever. People think that like, oh, I said the name Jesus Christ. Well, is that his name? That's not actually his name. If you want to actually go with what's on his little birth certificate, right? That's not actually his name. That doesn't matter. What matters is this faith, this feeling, the Holy Spirit, right? What matters is this walk with God, regardless of what name you call God. Everybody in different languages calls him something else. That doesn't matter. Right? Like what matters is this. And so I have no problem telling you that people who might even say, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in any of this God stuff, but I do see the hungry and I feed them. I see the thirsty and their drinks. And then I go to the parable of the sheep and the goats. And what am I told? These people are going to go before God. And I still look, I'm still a Christian. I believe this will happen. They'll go before God. And as an atheist, they'll be like, God's going to be like, hey, thank you so much for serving me. And they're going to be like, I didn't believe in you, right? I'm an atheist. Like I didn't feed you or give you water, or, take you in when you were homeless. And God's going to be like, yes, you did. Because that's what he says to these people. Like, call me a heretic if you want, but this is the gospel. I mean, this is just what it says. This is what Jesus says as far as how to get saved.
No, I first of all, I'm totally on board with this, but I'm also struggling with my childhood of indoctrination in the church and everything like that. And I guess my final pushback on that idea would be the second thing that Jesus says is love your neighbor as yourself. But the first thing he says is love God with all your heart. And the interpretation I've always heard that being is that you declare that you're going to follow God and that you accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. And that's for people who have been exposed to Jesus and have been given the opportunity. And the sort of path that you're talking about, I have always read and grown up with the idea that path is available to people who were never given the opportunity to seek Jesus. So I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I understand. Mine is very simple. I understand saying this is given to them who's not given the opportunity, but that's not what God says. That's a human thing that we've decided to add.
Mm.
And
so then your idea would be that those two commandments are the same. Like they're not separate entities. They're basically, you love God as your personal Lord and Savior, or you love Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior by loving your neighbor as yourself.
Let me share the screen one more time before I go to Ben, who's been very patient.
I've got to bow out. I just realized what time it is. I was going to bow out at 9, and I was so enjoying this, I didn't. This was so really good study today, guys.
Thanks, man.
So enjoyed tonight. I need to go say goodnight to my kiddos. I want to be a good dad here. But guys, thank you. I so enjoyed tonight.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. We love having you. Please come as often as you can. We love you.
I love it. I'm really looking forward to the next one. By the way, I have a question I'm going to be throwing up on Discord. I want to throw out to you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you what you knew about the United Church of Christ. But so be thinking on that one, because I wanted to we can discuss that on Discord. So
Okay. Sounds
right.
good.
Good
Sounds
night, guys.
Good night.
Have a good one, man. So this passage that I have on the screen here, I should probably zoom in a little bit. Make it a little bigger here. All right. The second is like it. You shall love the neighbor of you as yourself. This word homoia, right? This word in Greek here. Let's go ahead. And for those who don't speak Greek, I am bad at it. I am trying my best, but I do. I click the word here and I get other things, other times that this word gets used in the Gospels. Here's different conjugations over here on the, whoop, that didn't highlight what I thought it would. You've got different conjugations over here on the right side, but we'll just look for the exact conjugation here. Second is like it. All of these comparisons that we have is saying it's the same as, right? These are all direct comparisons. You see at the beginning here a few analogies, right? It is like children. Heaven is like a mustard seed. It is like this. So what is being measured here is not the second commandment, is kind of like it. The second commandment is the reflection of it, right? It is it. How do you prove you love the Lord your God with everything? This is the reason the man asked the follow-up question, who is my neighbor? Because it's not just because the reason Jesus brings up the two, we see them separate. But by the word part and what this means is that this second one is like the parable of that first one. It's the way you live that. How do I do the first one? It's done like this. Matt, another good one right here. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure, right? Like kingdom of heaven is like a merchant, right? Kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet, right? Like we get all these. Kingdom of heaven is like a landowner, right? So this is the way that word gets used, and it shouldn't be a surprise for those who know even English translations when we look at homoia. That word homo, it's not similar. It's with it's a homonym. It's like it, right?
Yeah, it's the same.
It's the same. So what he's saying is not this second is in the same vein. He's saying this is the same. It's just that's the practice, right? Loving God and loving your neighbor is the same. And we shouldn't be surprised about that at all. We're told when we serve people, we're serving God, right? So there's no difference between the two. So it wouldn't make sense, Aaron, with the way you're saying it. And this is the way I hear it from Christians as well. I love God, but I might be a little crappy to my neighbor, but the important thing is that I loved God. And that so like those two things are just separate. I did really good at the most important commandment, but the second most important commandment, I didn't do well, right? Jesus, like when he says, what's the greatest commandment? And then he says, and a second, right? Like these two are indistinguishable. The guy asks for just one. And in fact, even this guy gives two, right? Because they are related. They are the same. They are indistinguishable from one another. Just by word part alone, it's impossible to isolate the one from the other. So the idea that we can be either, and I hear both, right? That we can love God but be crappy to our neighbors, or that I can love my neighbor and be crappy to God is not possible. They are inextricably linked. Anybody who is good to their neighbors is serving the Lord. And anybody who is serving the Lord is serving their neighbors. There's no alternative otherwise. There's no room for it in this passage. Anyway, that's why I wanted to bring it up. I think it's important for people to know.
I appreciate you clarifying that because, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Aaron, current events this week. I think I may have a different one than you, but do you have anything on your mind that you wanted to talk about?
Honestly, the last couple of times that we've had current events, I've just been like so tired of everything going on that I haven't been like bringing anything specific. So I'm eager to see what you brought because I'm sure it'll be something that I've seen. But yeah, your audio cut out.
I'm sorry, I muted myself to be kind while I was typing, and then I forgot to turn it back on here. Let me see here. So I'm going to go ahead and share this tab. There we go. So we've got, and I know tariffs are hot, but I feel like with you, it's almost been talked to death.
Yeah.
It's I will say, it's astonishing to me how many, how everybody knows tariffs are bad, right? Like everybody on the planet seems to be aware of it, that it's punishing the people within your own country. Like I have so rarely seen such unanimity on an issue that the economists and like the regular average Joe now recognize. Now it may be because of this recent event, but at least is like, oh yeah, we pay those. Like that's just, it's common knowledge that we pay those. And the buck gets passed down to us somehow, some way. So it's almost like it's hard to, I guess I'm glad that, I mean, we talked about it a little last week, but I'm glad like we can kind of skip it this week because what's there to say? You know, the market crashed completely when he was like, we're doing them. And it's funny. It actually rebounded a little when some anonymous person on Reddit was like, no, he's about to cancel him. And then the White House actually answered and was like, no, we're not going to do that. And so it went up 1,000 points and then down 1,400 points as soon as the White House responded. And then today we're up 3,000 points. We've almost recovered the full 4,000 we tanked. Why? Oh, because he's pausing all of them except for China or whatever. But it's like, they're dumb. They're dumb. They're bad. Now, measuring things by stock market is also dumb. That's just a good way for us to easily present our case. But because I think, unfortunately, people feel humiliated when they're like, it's harder to feed my family. That feels personal. Like we failed somehow, right? Like, but that's what's
because
actually
people don't want to recognize systemic failure. We're indoctrinated to take it as a personal failing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're I mean, exactly that. I can't say it better. We're indoctrinated into believing that this is a personal failure if you can't feed your family. And so what we do is we judge things by the stock market because it's like, oh, the market is bad. But I mean, when the price of feeding your family doubles in like the last like 10 years, I mean, that's something, man. Like that's bad, you know? So I was going to bring this up here. It's another one that Trump is doing this week. And it's a little bit of an acceleration from what they've been doing. And that we're just like revoking entire citizenships from just whole countries. Like citizenships as well as legal residents, as well as people that are just permitted to be here and that have had a right to be here. And it's being just revoked. And we're not even revoking them selectively anymore. It's everybody from these countries.
Yeah.
This is not, you could have done everything right. And I say it's an acceleration because frankly, these people paid money.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to bring up.
Okay.
Is for people who are not completely unaware of the immigration system and how it works, to go through these processes, any processes, involves usually thousands of dollars. Like, I mean, if you look on the government's website right now and you try to just look up the cost of like applications for a visa, you'll usually find that it only costs you like $200 to $500 on their website. But the reality is paying all of the different fees that go along and everything that goes involved in the process. You know, like having to go in for the required medical checkups before you can apply for these things, and the mailing is like the mailing costs and everything. You're easily looking at like $1,200 to $1,600, which is a pretty huge imposition for poorer families. You know, I don't have $1,600 in my couch cushions. You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then to just have Trump just take it away on a whim, just like fuck these people in particular for no reason. Like it's just spite. Like, is he going to be reimbursing all of these people for their fees? I guarantee you, the answer is no. He's going to say it was a privilege for you to be able to stay in the country while you did, and now we're revoking that privilege. You know,
if you pay for it, is that a privilege?
Yeah,
it's a transaction, right? I've got up on the screen here for those who are watching here. This is a flow chart of how to just get your green card. First, this isn't just immigration. That's way more complicated. But this is just even getting a green card in the US system. And it's so complicated. Like you can kind of find your way here and here, but if you backtrack this, like start with green card and then look back up, a lot of these points are like wait for 7 years, right? Like, or wait for 30 years, or wait until, like, I mean, I don't even want to say that. Wait until we get back to you.
Yeah.
That's it. Right?
Yeah,
Like
there's a lot of people that I shouldn't say a lot of people. Most people on Earth, there is no path to citizenship. There's no path to even a visa. Like you could start and you can attempt to do it and you will be rejected. You have to be a family member of somebody who's already in the country, or you have to have a lot of money, or you have to be a celebrity or something like that. There's no legal pathway to permanent residency for most people in the world.
Yeah. So like, I mean, a couple of these to point out here. Do you have a job opportunity in this? Are you already in the US? Are you already legally in the US? That leads you to this side of this flow chart here. Navigating all this, which, I mean, might I add, sorry, is at the very center of all of it. Somehow you've got to wind yourself up here. And you would think these people would have the easiest path, right? They're already here legally. They're already in the United States. They have a job opportunity. Look at how many clocks, the pictures of clocks are on here. Clock just means you're at their mercy. You're waiting. You could wait 30 years for some of these.
My mother-in-law is currently in the process of, we're about 6 months into her current application. It's about 6 months into her current application, and she was denied once, and we appealed for it. So we've been in the process now for about 2 years. Yeah,
that's ridiculous, man. It's so ridiculous, and I mean, it's so. You look at the people that get fast tracked into it, and some people will be like, "Well, my wife got fast tracked to it. I just had $5,000 and she came from Germany and like whatever." And like, yeah, there's a way to like kind of make it easy.
You can grease the wheels with money.
Right. You grease a lot of these wheels with money, right? Like that's not the way it's supposed to work. Like that's not the way any of this is supposed to work. And I think especially now that we're reading over the parable of the Good Samaritan as one of like these not only important but like what they call a salvific parable, right? Like this pertains to salvation within the Bible, is how we treat those who are foreigners, those who are immigrants, even illegal immigrants, right? In the case of the Good Samaritan, right? But how we treat people who are not supposed to be there, and how we treat people who are poor, how we treat people who are strangers and visiting, who are less advantaged. How we treat them is how we are judged when it comes to getting into heaven. So something that I just can't stress enough with all this is this is our salvation. Like this is what Christian persecution looks like. I know I've said it before and it's probably redundant, but Christians want persecution to believe. I was asked to shut up when I had a megaphone and I'm standing at a street corner and I'm talking about how gay people are, God hates F words and they're going to hell, right? Like I hate them. And how I'm protesting military funerals or whatever. And I'm allowed to be here on this sidewalk. They want to believe that that's what Christian persecution looks like when they get asked to shut up, for being jagoffs, Oh, is like what happened in Britain recently. And listen, I disagree with this rule, but like there are these people that are praying outside these abortion clinics, right? But they're just praying silently, sure, but they're making a big spectacle of it, right? And the idea is that you're supposed to feel bad or something. And Britain, unfortunately, like I will say, illegalized it, which is not the right way to handle the problem. But that's not really Christian persecution. You're persecuting them and people are responding to you being you persecuting them. This is Christian persecution.
The proper way to handle those people is to create a sign that's rehearsing the passage about you should go into a closet to pray. The people who pray on the street corner, and just like have a big sign with that passage up and like walk around them with that.
I didn't even think of that, but that's such a good passage because it's like, don't be like the Pharisees, like praying to create a spectacle or whatever.
Exactly.
It's right. Like you're not even practicing your faith when you're doing this, right? Yeah. You're just, so it's not Christian persecution, right? It's just you being a bad person and trying to shame other people, and this is Christian persecution, right? Like, and this is, you cannot practice your faith and be bad to immigrants. You're actually like, at minimum, you're called to be not bad to them. But as a Christian, you're called to take care of their needs, right? Feed them, clothe them, treat them well. We read that bit about slaves and foreigners today in the Old Testament, even. Like, this goes back a ways this isn't even just New Testament stuff, right? This is Old Testament stuff for how we're treating our foreigners and how good we're supposed to be to them. Are we making sure that they're getting time off? Are we making sure that we're not taking advantage of them when we give them loans, right? Like stuff like that. Now that's high level, like Christianity stuff. But at the basis, you cannot be deporting people. And I just want to say, with what we've been talking about now, this has escalated to the point where we're not even talking about foreigners anymore. We're talking about people who have been legal residents in this country for 30 plus years. I mean, we're talking about like your neighbors. I mean, this isn't a foreigner. This is your average person. And simply because they became legal through Nicaragua, it's out. It's out. Sorry about your $16,000 that you paid. Like, it's out. It's gone. Like, it's so evil, Aaron, and I don't know what else to say, but it's just so evil. Like, it's not. If we were judging these people, I mean, if the government, I still would oppose it. But even if the government was really good about making sure that these people were like violent criminals or something like that, even then, I'm aware it would counter that idea about, what we read today about giving people good fertilizer and nutrition and seeing how they bloom and everything like that. But I really wouldn't have a leg to stand on, right? If the government were like deporting only rapists or murderers or gang members or something like that. But we're not. We're just in mass. Did you come from Nicaragua? Not a citizen anymore.
Yeah. And I guess the question is, what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to call it evil and then move on with our lives, and be good Germans? Right. I don't know. I don't know what to do about it, because any escalation, or I shouldn't even say escalation, but like any appropriate reaction is setting yourself up for personal doom. But like, what do you do? Like, I think these protests were a good start that happened last weekend.
Yep.
Apparently it reached the point of like multiple millions of people. I fortunately already had plans, and I kind of bummed out that I didn't go participate to the local one that was closest to me. But yeah, I was pretty motivated by the fact that millions turned out.
Yeah. Well attended. Yeah. I am really glad that we're that there is some pushback against this, but as you mentioned, like, what do we do to actually stop it? And like, if somebody breaks into your house, as a Christian, I can tell you not to shoot them, but I'm aware that they're at your mercy. Like, these people are doing the equivalent of breaking into your house, right? Your neighbor's house. You're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself, right? They're breaking into your neighbor's house and kidnapping them and deporting them. They're bragging about how the places they're deporting them to have horrid conditions, rancid environments, that they don't take care of their health concerns, that they are mistreating them, abusive, torturous. I mean, they brag about it, right?
A year ago today, we were still hearing the old Republican line of, we're not anti-immigrant, we're just anti-illegal immigrant. Mm-hmm. And you don't hear that anymore. Now the White House tweets memes insulting the people that they're deporting, and it's nothing but overt cruelty. Like that's the point, is the cruelty.
I mean, they mistakenly and admittedly mistakenly deported somebody. And then what is the White House response? It's not fix it. It's file an injunction to keep anybody from fixing it, and then get JD Vance on Twitter to lie about this person, like that we accidentally deported, to make them seem like a bad person. I mean, it's
After they've already admitted it.
it's
So,
like shooting somebody in their own house. Remember this? And then it's being like, but they had weed, but they didn't even have weed, right? Like, it's just
Right.
shooting somebody in their own house. Like, it's
But the fact that JD Vance is like, he goes out there after they've already admitted that they screwed up,
yep.
and goes and runs defense for it. It's like, it's not only cruelty, but it's stupid cruelty. Like, it's just mean-spirited, evil cruelty.
Yeah. There's really nothing good to this.
That's the reason why I don't have anything for current events anymore. It's like it's like every single story is like, oh yeah, here's another instance of cruelty for the sake of it.
Yeah.
There's no debate to be had over it. There's no like it's there's nothing new. It's just another instance of cruelty.
We just can't be blind to this stuff. I think there's a lot of churches that are willing to risk it, and I think that that's kind of something we've got to do. We've got to unite with churches that are. I would encourage anybody to join one that is willing to take a stand, because solo, they're going to divide us up, right? But at least get in the newspaper if you're going to go down, right? Like, at least make them break into your church, make them show off their aggression, right? This was the what they call the November riots, the one from Les Miserables, November. It's a month.
I'm not familiar enough with
the idea is that you're making them showcase their aggression, right? The idea is that, like, you're gonna like make them kill a bunch of college students to be like, this is who they are, right? Like, I'm not like, when they are, and this is something the governments are doing, right? Like, especially in like Texas and Ohio, they are targeting churches that are taking care of immigrants. They're shutting them down. They're breaking into their churches. I mean, they have actually been,
I remember the story,
pulling out parishioners during services, right?
Well,
like,
and the wild thing is, this is before even Trump. Like, this is Biden era. I remember a church that was putting out water for the people that are trekking across the desert in Texas and New Mexico and everything like that, and the state going after them for doing that. Like, it was a whole church group doing that, putting out water and provisions for migrants, and the church getting shut down.
It's a good halfway step for people who don't want to get arrested, because it's not, in most places. I actually had a clash with my community, I've talked about before, where it actually did become illegal to give these people we actually fought back and won. It was the most temporary of any law our city ordinance has ever had, but with enough pushback, thankfully it became legal to feed the homeless again. But for the most part, it is legal to do this. It may be illegal for them to partake or whatever, but like, you are at least not risking yourself. And this is a really good way to show some solidarity, to unite with some other people, if you know, and still have some safety for if you don't want to get hauled off to a gulag for helping these people. Now, I can't promise anything because we're revoking legal citizenships nowadays, so I don't know.
It's right? We're probably a couple of weeks away from citizens being deported.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just with the way the escalations are going. I mean, and this is stuff, I mean, Trump bragged about deporting legal citizens. And I think most of us hoped he was lying, or at least thought he was lying, but apparently not. So I don't want to promise your safety, but I can't promise safety for anything in life. So I would say that this is at least like a low-ish risk if you're going to do some type of action against the government. And I mean, let's be honest here. I don't want to even the purpose isn't the action against the government. The purpose is fulfilling your Christian duties and loving your neighbor as yourself. And who is your neighbor? It is an illegal immigrant in the passage. So that's what you are called to do. And I want you to do that. And so go out and do that. there's going to be some government response because this is Christian persecution against practicing your values. Like you said, there's not much to say, Aaron, but it's just so bad. Like, it's just, I don't know. This is like tearing down like the Washington Monument and putting up like a Chichen Itza and doing human sacrifices on top and rolling the bodies down the
Yeah, I'm actually like
I just
I posted in the StreamYard the quote from the Statue of Liberty, and I'm wondering like how long. I mean, it's part of the quote of the Statue of Liberty. It's not the whole thing, but like how long before they like demolish the Statue of Liberty for being hostile to American values or something like that. You know, like it sounds like an Onion article.
Yeah,
but, like we're there. You know, like
I love the new Colossus. I love even the title of it because there's the old Colossus, which is like your
Colossus of Rhodes,
right? The Colossus of Rhodes, where you're kind of forced to be there, like welcome to slavery, fools. Whereas now it's like, please come here, like we want you here. You know, I'll just read the poem. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Unbelievably awesome poem. Like, makes me emotional reading it, right? Like tears in my eyes kind of thing. And then there's Matt Walsh just being like, hey, can we get rid of this thing? It didn't originally come with the Statue of Liberty anyway. I think it's time to just be done with it. Like, I remember being a Republican, and this was like me holding Democrats to this standard. Like, but they're so far gone at this point, like that they're just going to toss this out. Like this. Yeah. This is a place where like the poor come to do well, right? The huddled masses yearning to breathe free, where people can like be, I mean, the mother of exiles, right? You're not welcome in your other land. That's okay. You're welcome here. We'll be your mom, right? Like this is what America is really supposed to be. Like what an awesome Christian value that is. Like if you like that's what Christian nationalism really should be, if you think about it. Right? Like we have these types of standards for our theocracy, right? That we allow all the immigrants in here. But the Christian nationalists are not interested in Christianity. They're interested in nationalism.
Yeah.
And if you think that's an exaggeration, a book I encourage everybody to read, believe it or not, is The Case for Christian Nationalism, wherein you will get 30 minutes into this book, a long book, by the way, but you'll get within 30 minutes of it. And he says, you're going to notice that I don't really quote the Bible or any stories or anything Jesus would do and everything like that. This is more a political book and how it can be of a benefit to Christians to embrace these politics. Like you have to throw out step one of Christian nationalism, throw out Christianity. Then we can continue towards Christian nationalism. Yeah. It's a real thing, man.
We got to put that book on the book club list.
I don't want to.
I know you've already read it, but I want to read it at this point.
Painful and it is long. It would be a long time reading something we hate. I am totally down to do it.
I mean, JC and I used to read Mises's Socialism, and it was awful. We read like hundreds and hundreds of pages before we were finally like, okay, there's nothing of value here.
I think you would hate this worse. I truly think you may hate this worse. I think that I can at least have an intelligent discussion about the things Mises was talking about in socialism, whereas we could say like, well, that's not real socialism, or I don't think this pertains to what I know is socialism or something, but at least we can have a conversation about what's happening. Like there's a point that he advocates for Caesarism, which if you guys don't know, Caesarism is the general concept that you have not only a tyrant, but an unhinged tyrant. So much so that being afraid of what he might do keeps you in line. Ooh. Right. Like, so that the idea behind Caesarism is that like you even so much as step out of line a little bit, it might not even be against the rules, but you're afraid of what they're going to do. So there doesn't even really need to be rules because you're so petrified of getting murdered by this person on the top. And that is, I mean, anytime you are advocating for Caesarism in a book about defending Christian nationalism, you have lost the plot, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you about the Bible and Caesar. Like,
okay, so maybe not then.
I mean, I would be down to read it. It is so. I encourage people to read it to understand the problem with the other side, but it is not logical. I guess you could argue that there's like some political merit to it, but the political merits are almost entirely in conjecture and not in reality. So I actually, Papa and Marx make this mistake a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say we have Democracy: The God That Failed on our book list to read at some point.
And, I don't mind that one, but
yeah,
but I mean, I do have an issue with Hoppe in general. The issue I have with Hoppe is he recognizes the fall of Rome happening because they tried to start kicking all these cultures out, right? Like all the Romani, hey, there they come again, right? And like all these other like religions and everything out. When they attempted to become a monocultural society was when they got destroyed. The difference is, and they reached their height when they were multicultural. The problem is that Hoppe sees monoculturalism as a good thing. And once you have multiculturalism, then you're inevitably doomed, because when you inevitably try to get to monoculturalism, you will fail. Whereas I just want to be in multiculturalism forever. Right. This is the issue that Marx and Hoppe both have, is that you can't have this multicultural idea because you're going to get to a place where, I mean, if we all have the same culture, Aaron, won't we all just agree with each other constantly? That may even be true, but it's more dystopian than it is like an ideal society for somebody like me. Yeah. I guess I'm going on a tangent here, but the reason I bring that up
is entire culture of like Jeremy Kaufman's.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, right. Like, would they all and you know what? Even then, would they all like love each other? No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. Like, constantly be arguing about which Jeremy Kaufman has the better IQ and which one's the whitest white, right? Like, or which one's the most hardcore. Like, it would just be this degenerative society. And actually, for those who read Fall of Civilizations, that's a book I actually do recommend, that you will notice is a commonality. Societies reach their height, and this is not the author is not pushing an agenda, right? This is not like a liberty, anarchy, or some type of author that like agrees with me or something. But just in general, you identify a culture at their heights when they're multicultural and multilingual, and when they attempt to be monocultural and monolingual, it is a matter of time until they fail. And so when we see America attempting to become monocultural, or at least eliminating some other cultures, huge red flags go up if you're a historian. There's no way around it. And so, yeah. Sorry, Aaron, I kind of cut you off. But
no. I was just gonna say it's probably that time I head out.
Yeah, it's time. I'm gonna go do some working out now. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody who tuned in, thank you so much. I appreciate you watching. I noticed we again had nobody fall off, so I'm glad that we could keep you hooked for these couple of hours and that you joined us. As always, you have an open invite to join the Love First Christians. We're a free Discord group. There's a link on here. We'd love to have you talk with us and be a part of things. Aaron, I did want to let you know, I have not forgotten about what you talked about with like what actions we kind of want to take here.
Oh yeah.
I've been brainstorming a lot. We'll talk about it in the Discord, but there's been a lot that's coming. I want to do like, I've got some stuff, and I feel like just the composition of the group is kind of leading me in a certain direction, and I want to play the hands I'm given as opposed to try to force a hand.
Yeah.
I feel like we've got so many people, and you and I, Aaron, I think are a couple of the ones that this actually doesn't apply for, but like people that came from these like abusive, anti-intellectual, cultish almost homes that, I mean, so much sadly physical and sexual abuse among a lot of the people who found our way here. I just feel like there's something we can do with that because it's so much of our community. Like I think like I was surprised when we talk about sexual assault, how like 12 people, right? Like came up just being like, yup, me too. And just being like, ugh.
Yeah.
Something there we can do there. Anyhow, I just want to let you know I am thinking about it. That's something,
Of course,
something
yeah.
to talk about. And if you, listener, want to be a part of those conversations and kind of have a navigational ideas, Christian or non-Christian, we actually really need non-Christian input as far as evangelical outreach goes. We would love to hear from you. We'd be blessed to hear from you. No obligation. We're not going to obviously, do we want you to become a Christian? Sure. But like, I don't get any money from it or anything. Right? Like, it's just, we would still love to hear from you with no obligation to kind of be like, oh, now I have to sit through gosh, I've heard the pitch so many times, like, hey, no obligation, but here's 3 hours of videos you have to watch. Nothing like that, right? Like, we'd be blessed to hear from you, and that's it. Anyhow, guys, thanks so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good one.